Okay, in the last video we prepared a Photoshop file with 2 layers. You can always use more than 2, but I just used 2, a text layer and a background layer. The text layer with layer effects in Photoshop, I rasterized all those into one flat layer and rasterized the background. Now I'm ready to bring these into After Effects and do a little animation on them. So open After Effects, made a new project. First thing I do is save my project. And I make sure I save it in the same folder. Okay, first I'm going to make a composition, a new composition. This one I'm doing HD TV 1080 at 30 frames per second or 29.97. My image was prepared in Photoshop to be 1920 by 1080 pixels, 72 pixels per inch. For duration of this one, I'm just going to do 5 seconds. Do a pretty quick one here. I'm leaving black for the background. You can change it if you want. Okay, I have my composition ready to go. I can double click here to bring in some files. Find my folder. Here's the file I want. I'm going to bring it in as composition retain layer sizes. Retain layer sizes, editable layer styles. Okay, there's my 2 layers, background, text, and bring the background down here into my timeline, and then bring my text on top of that one. You can bring them in both at the same time, but then you may have to rearrange them. Either or is fine. And now I have 5 seconds, no animation. I'm going to do some animation, and then I'll add some lighting to this also. Or vice versa, add some lighting first. First thing I'm going to do is put my layers in 3-dimensional space. Even though they're 2-dimensional flat, I can still move them around in 3-dimensional space. So I can activate that here. Next I'm going to add a camera. I can double click down here. Sorry, right click down here and new. Or layer new camera. I can leave the default one. I can change it if I want, but I'm going to leave the default one. Okay, so now there's a camera in there. I can animate my camera also. First thing I'm going to do is move these guys in space a little bit. Remember if I click on my text layer, I could reposition them in space here or out here on my file. I can grab the red arrow to move them back and forth to right and left, vertically or horizontally, or in Z or Z space, which means closer to me or farther away in this space. I'm going to bring it a little bit closer, grabbing the blue and dragging to the right. Okay, I'm going to grab that background layer now. Do the same thing. I move him back in space, pushing him back. He's further back in space, and then I may need to make that background image larger to cover that whole background if I wanted to. Like I said, you can have other layers within here, but for this project I'm just doing these 2 layers. Okay, so I got them positioned in space. Now if I look at this from not just my active camera view, from the top or left or right, and I zoom out, I can see there's my camera. I can move this camera around in space too. I can bring it closer, move it up and down, change the angle. And here's my background image, my text image. Well, my text, that's maybe a little too far away. I can bring it back a little bit. There we go. And I'm going back to the active camera view here. Okay, so I brought these in, reposition them in space. Now I'm going to add a lighting effect to this. Then I'll come back and animate everything. So I'm on my camera layer, new. This time I'm doing a light. I'm going to call this spotlight one. I'll make this an actual spotlight. I can do different colors. Maybe I'll try a golden yellowish color here. Might be a good one. Keep it more towards the white though. All this intensity and everything like this we can change later. One thing I want to make sure is checked is the cast shadows. Make sure it's checked. I may want to lower the darkness a little bit. And everything else should be fine, and I can always change these things later. Okay, so there's my light. Now if I look at it from the left view, I can see there's my light right here. My camera's out here. There's my light. And I could position this light in space. I can move it back. Right and left, up and down. Horizontal, vertical. Let me go back to my Eclipse camera and see what the difference is. Yes, so I moved it closer to me, so it's backing away so it's covering more. The light is affecting more areas. If I bring it closer, it's very narrow, very narrowly affecting the text. So I sort of like this a little bit more. Good. Now if I'm clicked up here in my composition, I go to my view options, I can say my spotlight wireframe is either off, on, or on when selected. When selected, I can do the same for my camera. Okay, so that means if I have to click on that to actually see all the guidelines, or click on it down here in my layers, my timeline. Let's look at some of the adjustments we can make on the spotlight. We have our basic transform, so I can change the position either by clicking on the arrows up here or moving or adjusting these down here. The orientation, that's sort of the angle of it. It's still in one place, it's just rotating the angle of this light. So I think I'll do that. And I can have rotation of the light here and make it rotate multiple times if I animate it. That's under the transformation. Then we have some of the light options. The intensity of the light, is it brighter, less bright? I can change the color here. The cone angle. The cone angle is basically how big is that spotlight open. Make it narrow down so it's more of a tighter spotlight. And feather is how soft the edge of that light is. Is it really sharp or is it softened? You can experiment with some of these other ones. There's my shadow. Again, I can change that. Alright, good. Now one thing I may want to do is allow my other layers to take that shadow. And I can do this by, here's on my text layer, I can go to my material options and I want to make sure I have that cast shadow on. Okay. The light's pretty far away, so it makes a pretty big shadow. Light transmission, how much of that light from that text layer is reflected onto the surrounding areas. Except shadows on. Ambient is a little bit lighter. Specular intensity, how vibrant or how bright is that text. Shininess, metal. If I lower that metal, it makes it feel a little more like a reflective surface. So I can do some adjustments to that material here. Good, I think that looks pretty good. Do the same with the background if I want to. I can make sure the cast shadows are on there. Light transmission. Can erase some of these different ones here. Until it looks the way I want it to look. Good. Now let's do some animations. In our next video we'll do some animations on the light, on the camera, and on some of the layers.